One of the most common questions I get is how a criminal conviction is going to affect your nursing license. And it's a long discussion. It depends on the facts of the case, but let me give you some general ideas. First of all, as I covered in another video, you always have to report a criminal conviction on your application or application for renewal. There's a place, have you been convicted of a crime in the last 2 years, or if you're applying new, and you check off yes, unless you have a pre-sentence conviction, or none, then it's not a conviction actually. If it's a pre-sentence arrangement, then there's an exception there, or if the records are properly sealed from years before, you may not have to report it either. So it just depends on that situation. But generally speaking, most of the time you have to just check off yes. So how does that affect your license? Well, if you're a brand new nurse, the nursing board can either decide that they are okay with what happened in the past. If it involves substance use or substance abuse, then they might decide to put you on a monitoring agreement. And I've been successful in helping nurses avoid monitoring agreements, even though they had a prior conviction for that. Just, it depends, again, it's very fact specific and how we approach it, but it is possible to avoid monitoring. Now, if you are already a nurse and then you had a conviction, again, the board's going to look at that closely and decide whether to bring discipline for that. Often they do, but I have had occasions when the board has been satisfied with meeting the requirements of the criminal court and have decided not to discipline. So there are a lot of things we can do to help in this area. And the earlier that you get a lawyer to help you through that process, so that by the time your renewal application is supposed to be filed, we've done everything we can possibly do to satisfy all the concerns of the board about that conviction. Now, when it comes to a conviction based on alcohol abuse, which is very common, a DUI, or even now drugs like marijuana under the influence and a crime is committed, such as driving under the influence of marijuana, then there's a whole nother set of criteria that we have to be concerned about. And the main thing is that the board very often will subject a nurse to a probation agreement. And this means restricted license and a lot of other criteria, which I won't go into now because it's a rather lengthy list. It's a lengthy document. And one of the threshold questions that they want to know, and it's fair that they know this or inquire about it, is whether the nurse has a substance use disorder problem. And so one of the things we do is we evaluate you or have you evaluated by an expert who can determine whether or not you meet the criteria for a substance use disorder and satisfy the concerns of the board and the board staff that hopefully you don't have a problem. It's a one-time thing that'll never happen again. And a lot of nurses never drink again or are very careful about that. So depending upon the situation, a criminal conviction can have very serious consequences. On the other hand, if they're handled correctly, the disciplinary measures can be minimized if you satisfy the concerns of the board. I highly recommend, if you're in that situation, that you give me a call for a free and confidential consultation so we can discuss this at length and decide what is the best course of action for you and for the board's concerns.